Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Depression Quest, an interactive non-fiction about living with depression. Its emotional character is probably mostly indescribable, except as a sort of double bind in which any/all of the alternatives we associate with human agency, sitting or standing, doing or resting, speaking or keeping silent, living or dying, are not just unpleasant but literally horrible. David Foster Wallace. Depression Quest is a game that deals with living with depression in a very literal way. This game is not meant to be a fun or lighthearted experience. If you are currently suffering from the illness and are easily triggered, please be aware that this game uses stark depictions of people in very dark places. If you are suicidal, please stop playing this game and visit the Suicide Prevention Hotline to talk to someone. The goal of this game is twofold. Firstly, we want to illustrate as clearly as possible what depression is like, so that it may be better understood by people without depression. Hopefully this can be something to spread awareness and fight against the social stigma and misunderstandings that depression sufferers face. Secondly, our hope is that in presenting as real a simulation of depression as possible, other sufferers will come to know that they aren't alone, and hopefully derive some measure of comfort from that. It goes without saying that because of the very nature of depression, it is experienced differently by every person who suffers from it. We aren't trying to say that this is the best or most accurate representation, merely that this is an amalgamation of the experiences of the developers and several people close to them. Many of the following encounters deal with issues such as therapy, medication, handling a love life, and reaching out to support networks. In reality, less than half of depression sufferers actually seek treatment for reasons such as lack of money, perceived personal failing, or public stigma. These things were included in order to touch upon as broad a range as possible, since all these elements can be very important to sufferers of depression, though they will likely not be experiences of most sufferers. It's important to recognize that not everyone with depression is so lucky. Many people with the illness don't have a lot of the luxuries that we have in this game. We've written it this way so that we can focus specifically on the illness, which becomes more and more difficult to deal with as the person who has it is less and less well off. This game uses audio as part of the play experience. We encourage you to play with your sound on. Thank you for playing. So yeah, this is a free game on Steam by Zoe Quinn, Patrick Lindsay, and Isaac Shankler. I have played it through once before. Yeah, okay. Return. Resume game, thank you. Yes, hi. So anyone that's either going through depression or is curious about, has a friend or family member that's currently going through it, I would definitely recommend checking this game out. And so let's just jump right on in. It is early on a Monday morning. You are a mid-20s human being. You have a significant other named Alex, who you are rather fond of, that you have been seeing exclusively for the past few months. The rest of your social circle consists of a variety of friends and acquaintances, some of whom you met at your day job, which is a little boring, but pays the rent. You'd like to be doing more with your life, as would your parents, but you're still in the process of figuring out what that means and how to go about it. You are also dealing with motivation issues that sometimes makes dealing with these things difficult. You feel like this is probably your fault, and on bad days can feel inwardly angry and down on yourself for being lazy, but you're not quite sure how you can break out of it, or how other people deal with these feelings and seem so very functional. You spend a lot of nights fixating on thinking about this, but never seem to do anything about it other than lose sleep. It's an unseasonably warm Wednesday evening. You've spent the past several hours at work. The past week or so you've found your job motivation flagging more so than usual. You've been in a fog practically all day today, simply going through the motions without realizing even what you've been doing half the time. And yet time seemed to be moving at half speed. You're so checked out that when your boss approaches you to tell you that it's dead and you can go home early, it barely registers. As you walk home, the streets hiss from the recent rainfall. You know that your significant other will be in classes until late, another couple hours at least. You briefly consider using this serendipitous solitude to catch up on that project. Jesus, I can talk. That you've been working on haphazardly for the past few months. As soon as you think about the work that awaits you at home, you can feel the panic creeping in from the back of your brain, unbidden. All you can think about is how incredibly far behind you are, and the amount of work seems nothing less than insurmountable. By the time you arrive home and change out of your uncomfortable work clothes, the stress is weighing down on you like a heavy, wet wool blanket. Your computer seems to be staring you down from your desk. You want to sit down and work, but the mere thought of trying to work sends your stress levels flying. More than anything, you feel suddenly and absolutely exhausted, and feel a strong desire to simply hide in bed. Do you? And you see, the first option here, order some food, grab a drink, and hunker down for a night of work. That's crossed out because you're not allowed to do that. You're simply too depressed to be able to handle that. So our options are reluctantly sit down at your desk and try to make yourself do something, turn on the TV telling yourself you just need a quick half hour to unwind from work, or crawl into bed. You're so stressed and overwhelmed you couldn't possibly accomplish anything anyways. You are depressed. Interaction is exhausting and you are becoming more and more withdrawn. You are not currently seeing a therapist. You are not currently taking medication for depression. So, let's take a minute here, now that we're at our first choice, and talk about the issues here. So, the game is giving us options here. It's letting us know, it obviously wants us to get better. It wants to give us a guidebook on how to actually get out of our depression, to actively be working towards the goal of, as you can see, seeing our therapist, taking medication for depression, getting our lives on track. Anyone who has actually suffered from depression, especially those of you in America, you know full well that it's not that simple, okay? First off, if you're anything like me, then, you know, you grew up in New Jersey in the 1980s, so actively seeking help from a doctor for anything short of like massive blood loss, that's pretty much treated as a personal failure on your part. Okay, if you're not actively dying, you do not go to the doctor. My mom, God bless her, she had all of the symptoms of a heart attack that she ignored for hours because she doesn't go to doctors unless for any reason, basically. She had every symptom of a heart attack, and then when my cousin came by, she started talking to her cousin, and my cousin was the one that looked up the symptoms of a heart attack, looked up what her symptoms were, found that they were the symptoms of a heart attack, and convinced her to go to the hospital, where they eventually found out it was her gallbladder. Thankfully, not an actual heart attack. Had it been a heart attack, my mother would be dead right now. She would have just ignored her heart attack symptoms until she dropped over, and my cousin would have found her laying on the ground dead. That's what I'm dealing with. That's what I got going on. You know, like, you do not actually get help unless it's something where you're going to die if you don't. So anything like this, where, like, you know, you're just, like, as a lot of people would put it, anything where you're just feeling sad, no, you don't get help. You just get told that you just basically get treated like it's your fault, you know? Like, you're the fucking loser for not being, you're just sad, why don't you just feel happy instead, you know? And then, like, earlier this year, I decided, you know what? I'm going to finally take charge of this. I've been basically suicidally depressed since I hit puberty, so for almost 3 decades now. For pretty close to that, yeah. I've not gone a week without seriously thinking about killing myself, at the risk of getting too real with all of you here, you know? Some weeks it's better than others, but, like, I mean, like, just for myself, like, just so that we can be all fully open and clear with each other, like, a few weeks ago I got some bad news, and it's been a struggle. It's been a very real struggle not to try to kill myself for, like, this entire month. So that's what I'm dealing with. Earlier this year, I finally, like, broke down. I was like, okay, this year is going to be my year. I am going to actually, like, go see a doctor, go get some therapy done, go get some antidepressants finally, now that I'm in my late 30s, okay? Going to fix my life, figure out how to get myself on track. The only problem is, of course, that I live in the United States. And in the United States, our healthcare system is such that even if your healthcare actually covers going to see a therapist, getting medication, it's specifically designed to be so unbearably difficult to figure out even how to go see anyone, to figure out who's in the network that you're using, what is exactly covered, what you can see a doctor about, what you can't see a doctor about. It's designed to be so confusing and such a chore to figure out what you're actually capable of getting that, like, most people just give up. Just completely give up before they even see a doctor. And that's basically what I did. I tried to go see a doctor, I tried to go get therapy, but when I went on the on my medical website, I could not even figure out, like, what exactly was covered. I could not figure out, like, trying to look up my medical coverage. I could not figure out a goddamn thing. I could not figure out what exactly mental health-wise was covered. I could not figure out what doctors I could go to in my area. I eventually found a phone number that I could call to talk to a representative, and then you call the number and you wind up in a menu where you're just pressing buttons into your phone for like 5 years straight, trying to find your way to a live representative so you can actually get some help, until, like, it's just so much, like, you're already at the point where you want to die, and then your medical coverage is medical representatives are actively trying to get you to give up. They want you to fail at trying to seek help so that they get your money without ever actually having to give anything back to you, ever. And then you get to sit there, you're already feeling like you've failed at life because you're in your late 30s and you've just creeped on through everything else. And now here this comes, and you're just feeling like, oh, here's another thing that I failed at, you know? Here's another thing that didn't work out. And you're just like, oh, this is just my life. Nothing is ever going to get better because I live in the United States and we do not get to have any kind of coverage for anything ever, unless I straight up put a bullet in myself or something or get stabbed. I do not get any medical care. It just is not happening. Even like, okay. As a lot of you know, because pretty much almost every single person that subscribes to me here knows me in person, I am a mail carrier for the post office. I got bit by a dog that broke out of its house on my route a year or two ago. The dog broke out of the house, jumped up, bit me in the face. There was nothing I could do. Workman's comp did not pay, like, blatant on-the-job injury should be fully covered. Workman's comp did not pay anything. My insurance did not pay a single thing. I just got debt collectors coming after me. Had to sue the family. Had to straight up sue the family in order to be able to get my medical bills paid. That is American healthcare. You pay and you pay and you pay every single paycheck into your health insurance, and then you get nothing back because the insurance companies are criminals. Are fucking criminals. So, anyway, moving on. Now that you all know way too fucking much about me, here we go. What should we do here? I'm tempted, like, obviously I know what we're supposed to be doing here. You know, just trying to force yourself to get better. Because obviously, you know, we've got nothing else to do. We just gotta keep moving on. But I'm tempted to just go with what would actually be the case, except I'm familiar enough with this game to know that if you just go with what the most realistic answer would be, you just keep moving along in the game endlessly until you make good decisions. So we're going to sit down at our desk and try to make ourselves do something, okay? You make a stop at your fridge, turn your favorite playlist on, and sit down to start working. You open the last file you were working on, and as soon as your hands touch the keyboard, your mind goes blank. All of the motivation and ideas you had when you arrived home vanish in a flash. Your brain seizes up, and you find yourself physically incapable of any sort of productive thought. You take a break to loosen up, popping into your email inbox, Twitter, and various other internet-based distraction fodder. Frustratingly, this pattern continues throughout the course of the evening. As soon as you try and focus on work, your brain diverts all its energy away from the task at hand. While you keep flipping back to your work, you find the sheer mental effort involved in keeping your brain focused is overwhelming and tiring. A few Twitter arguments, YouTube videos, and sparse amounts of actual work later, your playlist flips back to track 1, and the ice in your glass has all but melted, diluting the last dregs of the coke you were nursing. You look at the clock and realize that a few hours have passed since you sat down to work, and you've made negligible progress. I can just wake up early tomorrow and catch up, you think to yourself as you climb into bed, even though you know that never actually happens. It's a mild Friday afternoon. Alex calls you from one of her classes telling you that there's going to be a really awesome birthday party tonight at her apartment that one of her roommates is throwing. You've hung out with this roommate a few times with Alex, and you get along well enough but aren't particularly close. You don't have work in the morning and have nothing else in particular to do tonight. You are feeling kind of run down, but you have been fatigued most of the time lately. You mention that you're feeling ill because you're not sure how else to explain those feelings to someone else, and say that you aren't sure that you can make it tonight. There's a second of silence over your phone, but you can swear you can hear the sound of your partner's face fall. She tries to convince you anyway. You haven't seen her this week, and she sounds pretty insistent that you come over. She even drops a few suggestively worded hints that you can stay over with them tonight after the party. What do you do? Shake off your funk and go have a good time with your girlfriend, which you're not capable of doing because you're depressed? Agree to go? Or say that you're really just not feeling well and can't make it? I can confirm, I have 100% been the shitty friend that just says you're not feeling well and can't make it, or just made some kind of excuse to not show up because you're just so fucking overwhelmed by everything that you just cannot interact with another human being. It's just the worst fucking feeling. But you know what? This is a game about getting better, so we're going to agree to go here. You agree to go, even though you're really not feeling social. You know it's important to Alex, and you'd really like to see her. Seeing her does make you feel better sometimes, and you hope that this is the case tonight, even if it does mean dealing with all the usual social anxiety. The time to leave rolls around and you grab your overnight bag. Alex's apartment is a short walk away, and there are already people hanging out on the porch. You feel your chest tighten as you approach the building and try to steel your nerves. You quickly find your partner chatting away with the birthday girl, and Alex immediately lightens up when she sees you. "I'm so happy you came. I wasn't sure if you were going to make it." A young man taps her on the shoulder, and she turns back to you to apologize and let you know they have to do something for the party. Alex hands you a beer and plants a kiss on your cheek before going off to deal with whatever came up. As you look around, you don't see anyone else you recognize. And then you kill yourself with alcohol. No. Enthusiastically socialize, except obviously you're not ever going to do that, even on antidepressants. Awkwardly stand in the same spot, unsure of what else to do. Put your bag in your Alex's room and avoid the crowd in there for a while. Cling to the back wall, sip your beer, and wait for your girlfriend to return. Or proceed to drink in earnest, hoping it makes you less uncomfortable. I can tell you, my 20s were very largely, especially my late 20s, were very heavily filled with drink in earnest, hoping it makes you feel less uncomfortable. And then, see, you don't get very uncomfortable once you're just in a blackout. You know, then it's a party for you. It's not as much of a party for anyone else that's there with you, but it's a party for you suddenly. So, what we're going to do is, since there's no actual good options here, we're going to awkwardly stand in the same spot, unsure of what else to do, because why not? As Alex leaves you with a beer, you're unsure of what to do with yourself. Everyone else at the party is sectioned off into smaller groups of people who know each other, and you feel like it might be too rude to butt in on any one of their conversations. As you are looking around, you can tell that you don't really know anyone else at this party. The birthday girl turns to you and thanks you for coming, and you chat with her a little until she is approached by other friends and she introduces you to them. You have very little in common with any of them, and they all seem to have known each other for a very long time. However, they're still friendly, albeit a bit drunk, and ask you about your life and do their best to include you. You actually start to relax a little, but feel slightly excluded when you're the only one who misses an inside joke about someone's professor. You proceed to make small talk with that group until your girlfriend returns. At the end of the night, as you're falling asleep with Alex, she thanks you again for coming. Half drunk, she confesses that she thought you were going to flake out and was pleasantly surprised that you managed to come out. She says it lovingly, but you're not quite sure how you feel about that statement. It's a little after noon on a muggy Saturday. Your mother has come over for a surprise visit, claiming loudly that she doesn't see you enough, so she decided to invite herself over. As you converse, she walks around your place and you get the distinct impression that you're being inspected. "So what's going on with you lately?" she asks abruptly. Taken somewhat aback by this left fielder, you tell her you're not sure what she means. She repeats the question, saying that you haven't seemed like yourself lately. She gestures to the dirty dishes piled in the sink and notes the fact that you haven't called or visited in a while. Your reticence only seems to spur her on more. She presses you, asking if you're having problems at work or with Alex, and you're beginning to feel increasingly battered by her sudden well-meaning but overwhelming inquisition. Anyone who has had depression has had this very scenario happen to them before, where anyone that doesn't have depression does not understand and feels like, again, like I mentioned before, that you are just a failure. Like, that it's not an actual medical condition, you just suck. You're just a shitty person for not being able to handle life. So, here we are, right? Under her questions, you become increasingly uncomfortable. You want to be able to explain to her how you've been feeling, but the truth is you're not really sure yourself. Nothing horrific has happened at work or with your significant other or friends or anything like that. But all the same, you can't deny that lately you've just felt drained and as though you're not really here. You wish you could tell your mother these things, but she hasn't been approachable about negative emotions in the past. She is the kind of person who holds the opinion that the solution to any problem is to simply try harder and maintain a positive attitude, a stance that has reared its head in past conversations when you've begun to explore the subject with her. You know she's unlikely to be understanding, and you feel the energy drain out of you when you imagine what would happen if you managed to blurt out everything you are feeling. What do you do? And we can't let her know that you've been feeling down lately and that you appreciate her concern. We can try to be honest with her anyway. We can tell her everything is fine and thank her for asking, or we can change the subject. Well, you know what? Honesty is the best policy, even though it's fucking useless. You attempt to tell your mother how you're feeling, despite initial misgivings that you have about doing so. Finding the right words for how you're feeling feels like trying to untangle Christmas lights, searching for the dead bulb in the cluttered mess. She watches you intently and audibly sighs before you can clearly articulate anything. Unfortunately, she reacts predictably. An attitude like that won't get you anywhere. You need to work harder at getting what you want instead of sitting around feeling sad about it. Nothing good will happen unless you make it happen. She isn't angry or spiteful as she tells you this. You try to explain that it's not a matter of that, but you can tell that you're not getting anywhere. The frustration chokes the words in your throat, and you give up on trying to push the subject further. You know she is giving you the advice that makes sense to her, and genuinely wants the best for you. However, she doesn't understand that it's not as simple as somehow deciding to be positive or work harder. It's that those things aren't viable options because of these feelings. You accept your defeat and the conversation drifts on to other subjects. She leaves after chiding you to call her more often and take better care of yourself. You sigh heavily as you close the door behind her, spend the next few hours laying in bed staring at the ceiling. It's a lazy Sunday morning. You're idly clicking around online as your phone rings. Sam, a coworker of yours that you're friendly with, asks how you are and makes hurried small talk with you. You typically only ever talk to him on the phone when one of you needs a shift covered, so it's slightly awkward. You're waiting in anticipation for him to ask you to come in on short notice when he veers the conversation in a completely different direction. How do you feel about cats, he asks. Mine had kittens a few weeks ago and I'm having an awfully hard time finding a home for the last one of the litter. You don't have any pets, right? It takes you a moment to process this new information, and you're caught off guard as he begins to earnestly try to sell you on the idea of taking the last kitten off his hands. It's not something that you had specifically considered before, and he seems fairly insistent. She's a real sweetheart, really loves people. She's got all her shots already taken care of, and the vet says she's healthy as a horse. I can bring her over by your place tonight if you're interested. You look around your apartment and try to picture a cat in it as he continues to tell you about how cute she is. You tell him that this is all kind of sudden and that you don't have anything for the kittens set up here. Oh, don't worry about that. I can bring over a litter box and food and all that since you'd really be helping me out of a fix. It's the least I could do. I just don't want to have to put her in a shelter. You can't help but feel like you're being guilt-tripped, but you decide to give it some serious consideration. It does get awfully lonely around your apartment, and it might feel less empty with a cat around. However, since you've been feeling so down, it might not be a good idea to take on the responsibility of a cat, even if they are fairly low maintenance. What do you do? Okay, we can't take the cat knowing full well that you can take great care of it, and we can't decline, even though you'd be totally capable of taking care of it, you're not much of a cat person. What we can do is become a cat owner, you could use a companionship, decline, you're not in a good enough place to be taking on more responsibility right now, or decline. What kind of monster would just decline because you don't like cats? We're gonna become a cat owner. It is what it is. Look at this. Look at this tuxedo cat. You accept the offer of the kitten and hang up shortly after making arrangements for when your coworker can drop her off tonight. After hanging up, you worry about if you've suddenly taken on a responsibility that you can't handle, and hope you don't make a small animal suffer for it. You're not entirely sure what to expect, and you spend the rest of the afternoons researching cat care online and trying to think of a name. The evening rolls around and you hear a knock at your door, startling you out of reading Wikipedia entirely too hard. You take possession of a small, terrified black and white kitten in a carrier, along with everything you need to start taking care of her. You take her into your bedroom, close the door, and open the door to the carrier excitedly. She cowers in the back of it and you back off. Feeling slightly defeated, you remember what you've researched on introducing a kitten to a new home and leave her alone to go mess around on your computer, hopefully checking over your shoulder every so often to see if she has come out yet. She hides inside her carrier, periodically making sorrowful cat howls long enough for you to start worrying that she already doesn't like you. But by the time you go to bed, she's curled up at the foot of it, eyeing you nervously before falling asleep. Over the next few days, you gain her trust and she begins affectionately following you around, sleeping on you, and hopping up on you anytime you sit down to do some work. It's late Friday afternoon, and quitting time is just around the corner. A bright, clear day is giving way to a still, temperate evening. You can hear your coworkers all around you anxiously making plans for their evenings and weekends, but you're really looking forward to just going home and resting after what's turned out to be a very long and taxing work week. Just before the end of your shift, you get a call from Alex. It seems a group of your mutual friends are headed out to a nearby pub for dinner and drinks to celebrate the end of the week, and they want to know if you'd like to come along. You tentatively tell her that you're emotionally exhausted from the work week and a social outing like that would just take too much out of you today. You encourage her to go and have a good time since you know it's been a while since she's gone out with friends, but the effort feels futile since you know that she isn't going to go without you. A couple hours later, the two of you find yourselves in a familiar position. On the couch, watching comedy shows on Netflix, a box of pizza open on the coffee table in front of you. As you look across the couch at her, you start to feel anxious. You feel bad about effectively forcing the two of you to stay in tonight. Again. While you are always appreciative of your partner's efforts to take your feelings into account and help make sure you're socially comfortable, you sincerely worry that you're holding her back from enjoying a more fulfilling relationship. While she does seem to enjoy spending time with you, as the two of you sit in comfortable, almost contented silence watching old shows that you've each seen 2 or 3 times before, your ever-increasing fear that your relationship is becoming one-sided weighs more and more heavily on you. You feel more than ever like a burden or a ward to her, and it's virtually impossible for you to see what value you could possibly offer to her in return. Worst of all, this nagging fear has made you feel more self-conscious than ever, withdrawing ever inwards, and you've started to pull away even from Alex herself. What do you do? Well, we can't, despite the bad times, your girlfriend sincerely loves you, relationships are a two-way street, and you resolve to always be there for her like she has been for you. Can't do that. We can't tell Alex how important she is to you and enjoy your evening. We can, however, ask Alex if she's happy with your relationship, and we can also don't say anything. You're already worried about her being upset with you. And there really are no good options here, so let's just communicate, right? That's important, right? Yeah. You look over at Alex, who hasn't noticed you watching her yet, and you try to parse the expression on her face. You worry that it's one of sheer boredom and bare tolerance. You wonder if she's thinking about all of the fun things she could have been doing tonight if she wasn't trapped on this couch with you, ordering from one of the same 3 takeout places that you always order from. A sense of disappointing her creeps over you as you picture what the night could have been if you had just accepted the invitation she had made earlier. I know this is a pretty boring Friday night for you. Are you really happy being with me, being like this? She turns to look at you, forehead wrinkled. Why do you ask me that so often? You feel her body stiffen and pull away from yours just a little. Well, I mean, you start, but are unable to try and think of how to answer. Well, we can't say it's probably silly, but it's reassuring when I hear that we're on the same page. And we also can't say that I want to make sure that I'm right for you. What we can say is, I know it's not what you'd usually be up to. I don't know, I guess I get kind of worried that you're getting bored sometimes. Or, never mind. Just acknowledge that we get kind of worried. Alex sighs. Look, if that were the case, I would let you know. I don't think you're boring. You're more of a homebody than I am. I'm learning how to deal with that. Deal with it, you think, repeating it in your mind? Does she see you as a problem to be dealt with? You try to pick her reply apart in your mind, and all of your conclusions lead to your previous worry, that you're holding her back. You begin thinking that the phrasing was chosen without too much deliberation, and that despite her attempts at reassuring you, this slip of the tongue revealed her true feelings. As you picture how much fun she would be having right now if you had only accepted her invitation and managed to somehow get over your reservations and anxieties, despite not knowing how you would go about that, she cuddles back up to you. "Thanks for putting up with me," you say, staring at the TV without actually watching it. She sighs in response. It is a breezy Sunday afternoon. You've allowed Amanda, an old friend from school that is in town for the weekend, to talk you into leaving the house for coffee and catch up. You meet her in a small cafe and talk about what you've been up to since you've last seen each other, and you can't help but feel like they are a lot more accomplished and interesting than you are while listening to them talk about their life after school. When it's your turn to brief them on your activities, you feel anxious and ashamed and give a very abbreviated version. You try to talk about your job as little as possible, and you feel incredibly boring while you describe it despite her expressing sincere interest in you and your life. Amanda has known you long enough to read your mood and tone of voice. She leans in to ask a question while gently touching your hand, a look of genuine concern on her face. "What's wrong?" Do you... Well, we can't suggest a change of location and confide in her honestly, because why would we ever do that with anyone? We can't test the waters and open up a little, hoping she'll understand. But we can insist that nothing is wrong and change the subject. We can defensively ask what she means by that, and we can notice that our hands are shaking. Let's get a little bit defensive. Why not, right? Do you think something's wrong with me? You start to feel incredibly insecure as the realization creeps over you. Something you had said in your conversation made it seem like you were defective to her, and you find yourself feeling incredibly exposed. Amanda pulls away and apologizes profusely. "Oh no, I didn't mean anything by that. I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." You apologize as well and say that it's probably because you haven't been sleeping well. She tries to steer the conversation to one of mutual interest while you're still feeling incredibly embarrassed and vulnerable. You find it hard to focus on what she's actually saying because you're busy analyzing your behavior in your own head while making small talk. The awkward undertone remains, and the outing ends soon after that. It's a glaringly sunny Monday, and one of the few days that your brother Malcolm is in town and free long enough for you two to actually see each other. You have a dental appointment that day, but you make plans for him to pick you up afterward. Your appointment takes a little longer than expected because your dentist tells you that you've started grinding your teeth in your sleep to a worrying degree. Given how nearly everything in your life has been feeling enormous and stressful lately, this doesn't come as a surprise to you. He suggests that you try to reduce your stress levels and fits you for a night guard. It feels awkward and too big for your mouth, and you feel embarrassed looking at your puffed-out face in the mirror with it in. You finish up the appointment in a hurry and leave about half an hour overdue for your meeting with your always punctual brother in the parking lot. You finish up as quickly as possible and leave the building to scan the parking lot for your brother's car, but you don't see his old Civic anywhere. You pass by a blue Camaro and jump as it beeps at you, causing you to jump in surprise. Yes, It takes you a moment to realize it, but it's Malcolm in the driver's seat. You hop in the passenger seat and compliment him on his new ride, and he mentions that it's a perk of a promotion he's recently obtained at work. He starts telling you about how much more money he's making, how his career is really taking off, and how he's starting to look at houses with his wife soon. You clutch the bag containing the night guard in your hand and feel yourself clench your teeth as you think of your crummy apartment and how long it's been since you've been able to take a day off work without having to worry about making ends meet. He's only 2 years older than you, but it feels like he's eons ahead of you in every other aspect of your lives. "So," he asks, "how did your appointment go? Did you get drilled full of holes or what?" A sense of shame creeps over you. We can't laugh about our dorky night guard with our brother. We can't tell him about the night guard and why you need it. I can lie and tell him it was a routine cleaning, and I can tell him about my tooth grinding problem, but not the stress causing it. Well, we don't want to lie to our brother, so let's go with this. The dentist said I'm apparently grinding my teeth too much when I sleep. Oh, Malcolm replies. Been stressed out lately, kiddo? Deciding that you don't really want to go into it, you tell him that you don't think that's the case and it's probably just a random thing. He doesn't pry farther and instead begins reminiscing with you about the time you chipped a baby tooth because he accidentally knocked you over once. You go out to dinner and catch up on things, but you still feel somewhat distracted by the gnawing anxiety in the back of your mind. Though you enjoy your brother's company, you still feel like you want nothing more than to go home and hide from the world tonight. It becomes hard for you to try to stuff all of your horrible feelings down and go emotionless when someone like the dentist can see a fraction of what goes on inside your head. It leaves you feeling embarrassed and weak, and you hate yourself for feeling that way. You wonder if you're really fooling anyone into thinking you're a normal person, and then you wonder if your brother knows and is hanging out with you out of pity tonight. After he drops you back off at your apartment, you throw the night guard out. You can't stand to even look at the thing. It is early on a Wednesday morning. Lately, you've developed a nasty habit of waking up 10 to 20 minutes before your alarm rings, and unfortunately today is no exception. You lay in bed, each minute ticking closer and closer to wake-up time, and passing on a swelling wave of ever-encroaching dread. Sooner than you would like, your alarm blares with caustic inevitability. You frantically pound the snooze button and then retreat under your blankets, as if the warmth of your comforter can shield you from the passage of time. You almost always have difficulty rising from bed, but today that simple task seems nothing short of Herculean. After several snooze cycles, you decide that you just can't deal with work today. You're incapable of even rousing yourself from bed, let alone going into work and having to force yourself through a workday. Not to mention you've snoozed so many times that it would be impossible to make it in on time now anyways. What do? Well, we can't hop out of bed and start getting ready for work. You'll be late, but it's better than not going in at all. We can't head into work. At least you can leave early if it gets too unbearable. The only thing we can do is call your boss, tell him you're sick and won't be in today. In spite of the fact that you know that it's your job and that you should go, you keep fighting yourself every step of the way. Every time you resolve to climb out of bed and just go, your body seems to get heavier and your head gets foggier and you find yourself unable to actually make yourself move. You grab your phone and dial your boss's number, hoping that it's early enough yet that he won't be there and you can just leave a message. Fortunately, after a couple rings, voicemail picks up and you leave a message explaining that you're sick and won't be in today. As you hang up the phone, you worry that perhaps your message sounds like a lame excuse. You hope your boss won't call or email you to follow up with your message, but for now you're too foggy to do too much of any sort of thinking, and eventually you fall back into a sleep that is both heavy and restless, with your kitten curled up at your feet, occasionally repositioning as you toss and turn. When you wake up the next morning, short of feeling well rested, you actually feel more stressed out. While it was definitely nice to get a break from work, you're now faced with a new problem you hadn't considered before. You still have to go to work today. While you aren't having the same problems physically getting out of bed you were having yesterday, the prospect of having to face your boss after missing a day of work does not seem appealing in the slightest. You worry that your absence won't be seen as believable or legitimate, that your coworkers and boss will think you were just trying to half-assedly play hooky. Or worse, you fear that someone will actually ask you what's wrong, being caught in that instance and having to either make up a half-baked excuse, or worse, that they'll see right through you and know, quickly has your mood matching the drizzly weather outside. You know that you have to go into work, but your fear of being perceived as either lazy or defective is making you regret yesterday's decision to take the day off, and ultimately you feel worse for it. It's 2 a.m. on a Sunday, and you have work in the morning. You roll over to see the sickly green glow of the time displayed on your LED alarm clock and let out an exasperated sigh. You've been trying to fall asleep for over 3 hours now to no avail. Every time your head hits the pillow, you're overcome with anxious thoughts that wrap themselves around each other. Worries about your job lead to worries about your future, lead to worries about your very identity, and you're unable to shake them off long enough to doze off. Your eyes won't even stay shut as your mind races through imagined scenarios going horribly wrong, which you promptly attribute to your general worthlessness. Your thoughts run too fast for you to come to a satisfying conclusion on any one of them. Your room is completely silent, but the silence has given way to a loud static noise rattling around inside your head. Your heart beats loudly and you worry it's beating a little too fast. You worry that if you focus too strongly on your racing heart, you'll freak yourself out hard enough that you have a heart attack. You have to be awake for work in a mere 8 hours, and you know your performance has been sagging lately, and that this won't help the situation one bit. What do? We don't have many options here, guys. We can't force ourselves to sleep. We can't go to bed. It shouldn't be that hard. We can't just close your eyes and let it happen. Why won't your thoughts back off for 5 seconds? We can't snap out of it. What is wrong with you? Why can't you stop stressing out for 5 seconds? We can't, probably going to go into work tomorrow exhausted and fuck everything up and get fired. All we can do is, go to our computer. Sleep is clearly not happening no matter how long we lay here. You get out of bed and head to your desk. Laying in bed with nothing but your thoughts to keep you company makes you feel like you're going insane. The harshness of the light coming from the screen makes you squint as you turn it on, despite how often you find yourself in this exact situation. There have been so many nights lately just like this. As you begin reading a news story, an online friend of yours IMs you. You're up late again, I see. Yeah, can't sleep. Again. Thinking too much again? You guessed it. Want to talk about it? You end up talking with Attic for quite some time about how you've been feeling. He's always been easy to talk to about personal matters, and the added security of talking online helps. Being able to rethink what you say as you type it out and check it before you send it out helps you gather your thoughts, and you find it less intimidating in a way to type it all into a prompt than say it out loud. I don't want to be that guy who thinks they can diagnose something because I read a Wikipedia article, but it kinda sounds like you might have depression. You should talk to someone about that, like a doctor. You pause. You're not sure if it's how tired you feel or being frustrated from mentally eating away at yourself earlier in the night, but what he says rings true. Maybe you should see a doctor about this. We can do some research and see if there's a good doctor near you. It's not like you're going back to sleep anytime soon anyway. Might as well do something while you're awake. So we can't say, this is just a low night, I'm normally able to sleep and I don't have depression, but thank you for your concern. All we can do is either know that's okay, or it can't hurt to talk to someone, I guess. Oh, okay. Let's find you a doctor then. Just remember, there's nothing wrong with having depression. You wouldn't be ashamed to have bronchitis or something, so there's no reason to be ashamed if it's your brain that's sick instead. Yeah, I live in New Jersey. I've gone to work incredibly contagious before because heaven forbid did we ever get to take a day off without feeling like a piece of shit, right? Without feeling like we're fucking letting everyone down, like we're just less of a person for fucking taking a sick day. Yeah, it's fine. It's totally fine. Why not? But yeah, you Google around with Attic, and after a bit of searching, you find a doctor that has gotten really good reviews. You make a note of it and tell Attic you plan on calling her in the morning before work. You end up going to bed after that with a slight sense of accomplishment. Your kitten pads over and curls up at your feet with the thought of maybe feeling better soon on your mind. You try not to get your hopes up as you drift off to sleep. You groggily grab your morning coffee and scoot your rapidly growing kitten off your office chair, and despite her protests as usual, sit down at your desk to check your email. You notice the note you left yourself a few days ago with the therapist's number on it. You've been somewhat putting off calling her purely out of nervousness, but you feel like you should probably make the decision to do it or throw the note out and stop stressing yourself out about it. Your kitten curls up in your lap as you consider what to do. We can't call the therapist's number. You're looking forward to the help you think they can offer. We can't get it over with and call the therapist's office. All we can do is throw the note out. Who are you kidding? You stare at the note for a long while before crumpling it in your hand and throwing it out. Therapy is for people with real problems, not whiners like me, you tell yourself. Even if you did think you were worth the resources, you don't know if you could actually bring yourself to dial the number and say the words out loud. Somehow that would make what you're feeling seem that much more real. If you don't call, some part of you feels like it makes it that much easier to pretend it all isn't happening. Maybe that's for the best, you think. If you can just shove it all down and try to ignore it, you can struggle through the day and hopefully someday just get over it. Opening up is painful, and you're not sure if dredging all of this sewage out of your mind will even have a positive effect on you. The therapist would probably laugh at you anyway. It's a chilly Thursday night, and you've just gotten off work. This has felt like one of the longest days you've faced in recent memory. Even though nothing exceptional had happened, a ton of minor things kept going wrong, and coworkers had tried your patience throughout the day. You considered leaving work early, but you've already had enough absences lately on the days you feel too crushed by the job to get out of bed and didn't want to risk it. You're lost in thought on the commute home, and your feelings of frustration both with your life and the world around you build as you run into minor annoyances like someone bumping into you really hard as they walk by. By the time you get home, you're exhausted, and in a moment of metacognition, realize that if you don't snap out of it, you're probably in for a long and trying night as well. These pent-up feelings aren't dying down and are eating at you. You open your front door and stare at your apartment. An overwhelming feeling of exhaustion overcomes you, and you feel like your energy levels are low enough that you'll likely settle into a single activity tonight. What do? We can't shake off our bad mood and do something fun for the rest of the evening. We can't reach out to someone close to us. All we can do is don't burden anyone with our problems and distract ourselves. Yep, there we go with Netflix. What you really want more than anything is to turn your brain off and just disappear for a while. You sink resignedly into your couch and start playing video games, but you can't seem to focus on what's happening on screen. You cycle through a few different games, but tonight everything seems either too tedious or too aggravating for you to play for more than a few minutes. A few of your online friends invite you to play a game with them, but the prospect of having to talk, let alone cooperate with other people, seems incredibly unpleasant. You decide to give the video games a rest for the evening, though you worry that you've offended your online friends and your next conversation will be awkward because of it, giving you yet another source of stress to weigh down on you tonight. You boot up Netflix and cycle through some of your favorite shows and movies that you'd flagged as wanting to come back to, but again, nothing seems to be able to hold your attention. You feel what can only be described as mentally fidgety, like there's an unscratchable itch somewhere on your brain that is becoming increasingly hard to ignore. You send off a quick text to Alex, hoping that conversation will help pull you out of your head enough to relax, but you know she's in class tonight and the chances of her replying are slim. You head into the kitchen for food and come out with not so much a sandwich as just peanut butter on 2 pieces of bread. You pace anxiously around your apartment while you eat, irritated both by whatever this nerve-wracking feeling is and by your ability to just ignore it and unwind. Your evening is filled with half-successful attempts at distraction, and you ultimately head to bed late, head filled with static. It's a Wednesday evening, and you're visiting at your parents' house for a holiday. It's one of the handful of times during the year you drive out to visit your old hometown, and you've seen random people you had gone to school with around town. Whenever bumping into them, the usual short reviews, versions of what you've been doing since graduation, are exchanged. You've gone through a few of those today and have been very aware of how much you feel you haven't accomplished. When you were in high school, you had much larger plans, and you feel like you failed to manifest most of them. Even if you had managed to, you've largely lost interest in what you thought you wanted to do growing up. Now, you're not really sure what you want to do, and you felt like you're lacking the ambition or drive to figure it out. Everyone you've caught up with seems so much happier than you, like they've got their lives all figured out, and you've kind of been feeling like a failure by comparison. Your brother Malcolm arrives with his wife in tow shortly before you all sit down to dinner. He's been traveling for his job lately, and you haven't seen him since the day he picked you up from the dentist. Your parents haven't seen him since before then. During dinner, they all catch up, and Malcolm talks about the amazing things he's done on the road. Your mother turns to you and asks what you've been up to since you've seen them last. Oh, same old, you say. Nothing really new going on. Your mother makes a face. Oh, nothing new? How long are you planning on staying at that job of yours? What do you say? So we can't tell them about the exciting new job we're gunning for. We can't lie and tell them what they want to hear, that we're actively looking for a more prestigious position. and we can't admit that we don't know what we want to do. So, let's excuse ourselves to the bathroom. As your mother looks across the table at you expectantly, everything inside you wants to run away. You've had this conversation with her enough to know that anything you can say would either be a lie or would result in a lecture. After spending the day feeling like you're a failure already, you can't really handle more of the same from your family regardless of how well they mean. Actually, I'll be right back. I have to use the restroom. You excuse yourself from the table despite not actually having to use the facilities and head to the bathroom. You lock the door behind you and flip down the toilet lid, take a seat, and rest your head in your hands. You take a few deep breaths as your mind runs through its typical self-deprecating scripts, though you still feel as though it's a moment of relief. Even though you love your family, you really feel like they don't know you at all sometimes, and this makes them exhausting to be around on nights like this. You wish you could tell them what you're feeling, that sometimes it feels like you're lost in the woods, and that if you were to drop dead in your apartment, the world wouldn't notice. You want to make her understand that more often than not, you feel like an alien, like there isn't anywhere in this world that feels like a place where you belong, and you have no idea how to fix it or what to do. You wish you could find the words so they would understand you, but you end up feeling like an outsider instead. Instead, you decided to remove yourself from the situation and calm down. You couldn't see a resolution where attempting those things would work, and you needed a moment of space instead. You hear a knock on the door. Malcolm's voice comes through the door. "Hey kiddo, you alright in there? You've been in there for a while." "Yeah, I was just feeling a little sick." "Well, if there's anything I can get you, let me know. They're about to serve pie, though, if you're feeling up to it." "Yeah, I'll be out in a minute." Malcolm is quiet for a moment. "Hey, just so you know, I'm really proud of you." You hear his big footsteps walk away from the door, and you splash some water on your face before leaving to rejoin your family. It's a rainy night. You're hurrying through the rain to Alex's apartment at her behest. Though your pace is quick, the rain is steadily soaking up your pant legs as you traverse the town, and it's darkening your already poor mood. The call came while you were at home after a day of dealing with abnormally frustrating people. You'd spent the afternoon trying to unwind and get some work on your project done. Alex called and interrupted one of your try and make progress, get frustrated at not making progress, have a harder time making progress due to frustration, repeat loops, and you haven't fully shaken off the feelings of being annoyed with yourself from it yet. You knock on her door, and on the third knock hear her voice call from further in the apartment to come on in. As you cross the threshold, dripping rainwater all the way, you notice that the lights are turned down very low in the apartment. You squint to navigate it as you clutch onto your damp umbrella, but end up hitting your shin on a side table, mumbling a profanity under your breath. You barely make out Alex emerging from the hallway, clad in what looks to be a robe with the bare skin of her legs peering out underneath. "Why don't you come in and warm up?" she asks in her designated, slightly cheesy, sexy voice. After a beat of silence, she states more naturally, "My roommates are out of town this weekend, so I thought it might be nice to have a little fun while they're away." You appreciate her affection, but you're too wrapped up in your own negative feedback loops to be in the mood right now. What do? We can't let go of our stress and be intimate with our girlfriend. We can't try to unwind with her before getting physical. And we can't suggest we do something else instead. All we can do is, tell her we're not in the mood. I don't... You start, unsure of how to phrase how you're feeling in a way that doesn't hurt her. Even at those two words, her face is falling. "Right, this is sudden," she says, clutching the top of her robe closed. No, it's not you, She cut you off. "It's not you, it's me, right? It's okay, I get it." She moves to her bookshelf and blows out some candles you had failed to notice. It was cheesy anyway. The hurt in her voice cuts you down to your core. You can tell she feels rejected by you, and everything feels like it's happening so quickly and slipping through your fingers. You wish you were telepathic and could let her know exactly how you feel about her so that she wouldn't be wounded by your own mood. This is all really nice, I just have had a hard day, and you stammer, but she leaves the room and you hear the bedroom door close. Unsure of what else to do, you sit down on her couch to wait for her to return. You feel terrible for hurting her when she clearly meant nothing but good. Although you didn't want to have sex with her right this moment, you are beating yourself up for handling it so poorly. Why couldn't you find the right words to let her down gently without her thinking that she had done something wrong? Why do you have to be such a shitty partner? She emerges from her room, now dressed. Her eyes are red, but you can tell she is trying to not show that she was crying. I actually have to do a lot of coursework, so maybe you should head home. This was kind of a dumb idea anyway. Sorry. Okay, you mutter, not wanting to make things worse. A couple of seconds of silence pass as neither of you are sure what to say from there. You leave with a quick goodbye and curse yourself the entire way home. It's an early winter evening, and even though it's not particularly late, the time of year has lent the sky an almost prematurely darkened cast. Day after day, just like today, you trudge home from a job you have increasingly come to hate. On this day, your job misery seems to have reached critical mass, and not even shedding your rain-laden and uncomfortable work clothes helps you to unwind from your workday. You collapse into your couch, blank and numb. While your job always seemed to just be an unpleasant reality of existence, it was a position you sort of fell into unexpectedly, never intending to work there long-term, and it's getting harder and harder to keep it up. While it's certainly not your dream job, you've always just sort of stuck it out of necessity before, but it's becoming increasingly difficult to do that. Though you couldn't even begin to imagine what else you could do, you find yourself face to face with a question you just can't ignore. Is your complacency worth the price of this level of misery? What do you do? Can't get proactive, polish off our resume, and start looking for other jobs to send feelers out to? Can't try and at least be productive by focusing our efforts on our project tonight? We can't aimlessly look through classifieds for another job? All we can do is, turn on the TV and let our mind go blank. As you can see down here, our depression level keeps getting longer and longer. So that's life, guys. That's life. You grab the TV remote wanting nothing more than to forget all about the terrible day you had at work. You flip on the TV and let yourself get swallowed up by the couch. You grab your laptop to surf the internet while you watch TV, paying no real attention to either. You watch a few reruns of shows you're at best indifferent towards and a movie on TV that's a few years old, all while you scroll idly through your Twitter feed. At the end of the night, you don't really feel any better so much as you just feel numb, which is basically what you're going for anyways. Ultimately, it gets late enough that you tell yourself you should probably call it a night. You beat yourself up over the fact that you didn't accomplish anything this evening, but at least you managed to forget about your job for a couple of hours. As you fall asleep, you're acutely aware of the fact that after a mere few hours sleep, you've got to do it all again. It's a little past 8 p.m. on a Tuesday night. You're at your computer, frustration levels peaked, rubbing your eyes and sighing heavily. You're working on a project from your job that has you stretched to wit's end trying to meet a looming deadline, and as it lurks closer and closer, you're seriously doubting your ability to get it done. You're dragging your feet a little at work due to your complete lack of energy lately. In spite of wanting to do a good job, you find yourself unable to push past it and feel horribly useless for it. You slide your hands off your face to look at your screen as it beeps at you. Hey, are you there? I really need to talk to someone about something. You feel like you're getting nowhere with your current task, and could probably use a break. However, you know that you have a history of getting distracted and then losing motivation to pick something back up again afterward. What do? We can either try to regain our focus and not answer, or we can answer Attic. You're feeling like you've hit a brick wall with your task, so why not take a break and help out a friend? Hey, what's up? Oh good, you're there. I just found out I got cheated on. I don't know what to do. Oh no, that's horrible. The two of you talk for a long time and you lend a shoulder to your friend. You give him space to rant, to cry, and most importantly to be able to voice his inner turmoil. You give him your full attention and talk him through what his options are for what he does next. You keep him from doing something rash, and the two of you decide it's best for him to sleep on it before doing anything. Exhausted, he departs for bed and thanks you for being there to talk with him. As you close the IM window, you feel horribly sorry for your friend, but happy that you were able to help. It serves as a tangible reminder to you that you're capable of being useful to someone instead of solely being a mess that needs everyone else's help. You boot up your work project and find that you're suddenly able to get some solid progress done on it that night. It's yet another sleepless Thursday night. You're at Alex's apartment, wide awake in bed as she's sleeping peacefully beside you. She fell asleep hours ago and you've been laying there unable to shut your brain up long enough to fall asleep. You've added the feelings of insecurity about your relationship to the rest of the noise in your head keeping you up tonight. It was kind of a tense night between the two of you. You arrived after a stressful day at work, and as you made dinner together, you barely said a word. You were stuck in your own head and had a hard time really being present with her as your thoughts turned to all of the ways you feel like you're deficient at being a good person and beating yourself up mentally for each one. She told you she could tell you were in one of your moods, and that said that she wouldn't push you, but missed talking to you as the two of you sat on the couch together. You wanted to tell her how much you love her, but you couldn't make the words come out right and ended up sounding defensive instead. As you lay there next to her now, you trace your fingers across her arm just lightly enough not to wake her. You still haven't explained your depression to her, and it's starting to feel more and more like a secret you're keeping instead of something she simply doesn't know about you yet. It's becoming more and more apparent that it's impacting your relationship with her, and you feel guilty about this. However, you're also terrified that if she knew exactly how fucked up you are, that she would leave you. You already worry that she's only with you because she doesn't realize how terrible of a person you are yet, and you're afraid that this would be the final thing to expose you. She stirs in her sleep and squints as she opens her eyes. With the confusion that comes with waking up, she asks if you're awake, and then if everything's okay. Let's tell her about our situation. You feel like a jerk for accidentally waking her up, but you're afraid if you put this off any longer that you won't find the strength to tell her everything later. No, actually, everything isn't okay. Can I tell you something? Something important? Alex sits up, rubbing the sleep out of her eyes. For the rest of the night you lay side by side holding hands as you tell her everything. You tell her how it's more than just feeling sad sometimes, how you feel trapped by your own mind sometimes. How sometimes you feel nothing at all and how you can't shake it off. She listens the entire time, occasionally asking questions about how this or that works, or asking you to explain something further. She squeezes your hand and tells you she understands, and that she's sad you didn't tell her sooner. After laying silent for a moment, the weight of what you did hits you. You desperately want her to say something, to tell you how she's feeling about all of this, but you're too afraid of what the answer would be to ask. You start convincing yourself that now that she knows everything, she's going to leave. There's no way someone could deal with how you really are. So how can I help? What do you need me to do? She asks. You think for a second, and the answer you come up with fills you with despair. I honestly don't know. I wish I knew how to fix this, but I don't know that you can do anything. I think it's something I just have to live with. She looks at you with sad eyes before kissing you on the forehead. Then I'll live with it with you. I don't know how you could possibly love me. She rolls over and wraps her arms around your neck, settling her head on top of yours. You don't need to, just know that I do. It's a Friday night and you're laying across your bed feeling pathetic. As you were leaving work tonight, a group of coworkers asked if you wanted to join them for drinks. Feeling antisocial and put on the spot, you declined. You have a habit of doing this. You're often so convinced that you are weird and terrible, and any invitation to hang out with will end in disappointment for those inviting you. You never feel like you know how to act in group outings, and you feel like a total creep since it seemed to come so naturally to anyone who isn't you. You find yourself petrified of breaking some unknown social rule that you don't often go out. Now, however, you find yourself alone at home. Your brain has begun telling you how pathetic and sad you are for being unable to just be a normal person and go out with nice people. You can't figure out why you can't just go out and meet people and enjoy yourself. At the same time, you're also feeling like no one would possibly want you to hang out if they really knew you, because you're dull and weird anyway. You try your typical strategy and boot up Netflix to distract yourself from these feelings, but frustration with yourself builds, and you realize you have to do something else with your night. Anything else to take your mind off how awful and lonely you feel right now. What do? We can either drink, go out somewhere alone, or play with our cat. Obviously drinking is not a great option. Although, if you're suffering from depression, drinking to shut your frickin' brain down absolutely works in the short term. We don't want to talk about it because in the long term it's bad for you, but short term, yes, it is very fucking helpful if you haven't tried it before. But let's play with our cat. Fuck it, right? Nights like this, you're very glad you made the call to become a cat owner. Feeling too socially burnt out to interact with other people, you go find your cat. You get her to chase a laser pointer for a solid 30 minutes before she tires herself out. She pads over to you and collapses in a heap in your lap, purring loudly. Though initially she hated being picked up, you carry her to the computer desk with you and she doesn't object. Setting her down in your lap, you comfortably surf the internet for a while before heading to bed. Having her here with you has a calming effect, and it makes you feel a lot less alone. It's a cold Saturday afternoon. You've just arrived at Alex's apartment, and you're happy to finally see her after a week of absence due to your schedules not lining up due to work and school. You hug her in the doorway, but she breaks away sooner than normal and sits down on the couch as you take off your sneakers and lay them in the usual place, right next to hers. "There's something I was hoping we could talk about, actually," she says. You feel anxious at hearing those words and move to take a seat on the couch. Your heart starts to race. Is this one of those "we need to talk" situations? Has she finally had enough of your baggage? Did the week apart make her realize how much better things are without you? She sits down across from you on the couch, and you can tell by the look on her face that she isn't looking forward to saying what she's about to, and you feel your grip tighten on the couch cushion. "So," she starts. She breaks eye contact and takes a deep breath, which spikes your anxiety. "Things with us have felt kind of weird lately. It's like you've been really distant, and I'm not sure how to take it. I guess I just want to make sure you still want to do this. Us, I mean." She notices you gripping the couch. "I mean, I know you have difficulties with your situation, She looks at your face, seemingly searching. "I don't know how much has to do with it, or if it has to do with me, or... I just want to know where we stand." She looks at you with uncertainty, and you can practically see the knot of pain in her chest. You try to rein in your knee-jerk reaction to run. Unsure of what to say to that, your mind races. You know you have to choose your next words carefully. Though the self-deprecation rages in your mind, you try to think through it. You try to sort out what you really want to do here. A myriad of feelings is boiling inside of you. Which one do you listen to? We can either end things for her own good, you're clearly not making her happy. You still want this, say whatever you can to make her stay regardless of your concerns. Or, yes, there has been distance, attempt to solve it by asking her to move in. Well, let's ask her to move in. You look at Alex's face and you feel your heart break. You've never meant to hurt her and you're torn up that you've caused her pain. You can't help but feel like you've let her down and you want to fix it. You desperately want this relationship to continue, to be stronger. It's one of the few good things in your life and you feel like you owe her so much for helping you as much as she has. You're not sure how to solve things other than to literally remove the distance. Let's move in together, you tell her matter-of-factly. It will bring us back together. We could fall asleep together every night, reconnect with each other. You're really worried that if Alex were to live with you, she wouldn't be able to deal with your days of being unable to get out of bed, or nights where you can do nothing but stare at the wall and panic. However, you're too afraid of losing her to deal with that right now. You want to show her that you're serious about the two of you. Maybe I can use this as a reason to finally get my act together, you think to yourself. Maybe having her around will keep me from being depressed so often. I'm not sure what to say. This is all so sudden. She thinks really hard for a minute. Sure, we could try it, but we'll have to figure out logistics, and I have to... You interrupt her with a tight hug, which she seems initially tense, but loosens up to. You both recommit to making things work between the two of you and get excited while talking about what could be soon. You're tremendously relieved and can't wait to live together. The first few weeks feel amazing, but you quickly find that your choice was not a wise one. Trying to hide your struggles with your condition from your partner becomes more and more impossible, and you find that you lack many resources to properly deal with the situations that arise as a result. Due to the lack of communication, she starts feeling like it's her fault and a wedge is driven between the two of you. This fact is fuel for your illness and becomes another aspect of your life that you berate yourself for. Despite sleeping in the same bed, she feels further away than ever before. It becomes clear that this didn't fix any of the relationship's problems, and it deteriorates far enough that she moves back out soon after moving in. The reality hits you over the next few days, and you spiral into a very deep low. You withdraw entirely, and outside of work, your only interaction with another living creature is with your cat. You hardly leave your apartment despite it practically haunting you with memories of the past few weeks of your time with her. You can't stop replaying the failures you made with her over and over in your head, wondering what could have been if you weren't such a fuck-up. It's going to take you a long time to get over her. It's December, and you've returned to your parents' house to celebrate the holidays with your family. Out the living room window, you can see a gentle flurry of snow drifting down to meet the pristine blanket of white from yesterday's unexpected Christmas Eve snowfall, and you quietly laugh to yourself at how incredibly cliché it seems. Still, as you sit down to dinner, you can't help but notice how being surrounded by family and the overly kitschy atmosphere your mom's decorations have created have actually made you feel relaxed and almost comfortable. Your mom is running around frantically checking the oven and the stockings and just generally trying to family time it up, while your dad sits at the head of the table drinking a beer and laughing with your brother Malcolm. His wife Karen is there too, whom you've always gotten along well with, and your parents even agreed to let you bring your kitten along. She's been darting in and out of people's legs and hopping into laps all night. As you thoughtfully munch away at your turkey listening to the conversations around you, your thoughts drift back over the last few months. You think about how hard things had gotten, replaying over in your head some of your worst, as well as some of your best, memories. It seems like all of these things just came to a head over the last few months with a sudden flurry of relationship turmoil and professional anxiety, social stress, and above all, an omnipresent sense of weight that it seems you have just recently become aware of. You're drawn out of your reverie by your dad's familiar booming laugh as some cheesy comment Malcolm made seems to have hit its mark. Sitting at that table, you're suddenly immensely glad for the chance to be able to ignore everything for an evening and not have to struggle trying to explain yourself for once. Fortunately, everyone seems to be content with laughing at each other's jokes and discussing favorite sports teams, and for a while you think you'll be able to get through dinner without any embarrassing personal intrusions. But no sooner did a thought cross your mind than the table conversation trickles off, leaving a slightly awkward silence to descend upon the dinner. "So how are you doing these days?" your mom asks you pointedly. It's such a simple question and one that you seem to have had to answer countless times recently. You take a moment to collect your thoughts, then looking up you take a deep breath. "Well..." There's no doubt that depression is a battle, and it seems to have taken a particular toll on you. As the days go by, you find yourself interested in less and less. You think back to your life a mere few months ago, and compared to where you are now, it seems like you've just lost so much. Work has become unbearable as the thought of you dragging yourself day in and day out to a job you can't stand just so you can scrape enough money together to do it all again the next day has ground your will down. Lately, your job performance has suffered tremendously, and your boss has already had a conversation with you about your absences. At this point, losing your job is not only a real possibility, it's downright probable. Your personal relationships have deteriorated as well. While you could never describe yourself as a social butterfly, your constant flakiness and continuing withdrawal from your circle of friends have all but alienated them from you completely. Nowadays, you rarely see or speak to them, and when you do, the conversations are strained and perfunctory. You almost never leave your apartment anymore. Your detachment from the world even ended up costing you your relationship with Alex. While she made every effort to be supportive and understanding, your refusal to try and manage your situation forced her to have to choose between having to constantly look after you and pursuing her own goals. As she continued to excel in her program at school, as she made it very clear on more than one occasion that she was dedicated fully to her education and career, and couldn't afford to be held back by somebody who insisted on being stagnant. The subsequent split was practically inevitable. You never could wrap your head around the whole notion of therapy and view it as anything other than invasive. Refusing to admit your need for help, your decision to try and tackle your depression on your own now seems woefully miscalculated. Your friends may have been willing to listen to you at first, but over time your reluctance to accept any of their advice simply drove them away, leaving you with little in the way of a support network. With nobody to vent to and an inability or unwillingness to seek help on your own, you quickly lost any desire to attempt to overcome your depression, and your downward spiral seemed to compound geometrically. Poring over the events of the past few months is, even now, exhausting and defeating. Looking at the person you were mere months ago is almost surreal. It feels like a completely different person living a completely different life. In fact, it's hard for you to imagine ever having had a life that wasn't completely devoid of feeling or drive. The prospect of trying to imagine what your future holds seems not only impossible, but irrelevant and of little interest to you, as your life has just become just a series of trudges from one emotionally exhausting moment to the next. You look across the table to your mother, weakly meeting her gaze before dropping your eyes to the floor. You open your mouth to answer, but no words come out. You don't even bother pretending to try and think of what to say. Okay. We really want to thank you for taking the time to play Depression Quest. We realize it may not be the most enjoyable game you've ever played, or even the easiest, and we sincerely appreciate your involvement. Like depression itself, Depression Quest does not have an end, really. There is no neat resolution to depression, and it was important to us that Depression Quest's own resolution reflect that. Instead of a tidy ending, we want to just provide a series of outlooks to take moving forward. After all, that's all we can really do with depression, just keep moving forward. And at the end of the day, it's our outlook and support from people like you that makes all the difference in the world. Thanks again. Okay, so, I got a somewhat worse ending than I did the first time I played this. I'm not sure, it's been a while since the last time I played, so I don't know what I did differently that, yes, here is, all of the credits. The last time I played it, I actually did go into therapy and got somewhat better. Still had bad days, but got my life kind of on track. So, yeah, this is Depression Quest. It's kind of rough going, but for those that would argue that video games are art, for those that want to get into that whole debate that kind of died down once Roger Ebert died and stopped trolling everyone. Oh, I miss him. But, yeah. This is definitely one that you should check out. It's free on Steam. I think, if you go on the website, it has a link that you can donate to the, makers of the game. But, outside of that, yeah. You can just download this without paying a single penny. Just go right on Steam and download it right now. And, I hope... Obviously, I don't think anyone enjoyed this, but... I hope this helped, you know? And, I'll see you guys all in a later video, okay? Peace out, guys.